Join us today as we explore, empower, and transform. Are you ready to power up? Let's dive in. With our first guest, Hesron Gomez is joining us today, and the subject matter of what you were talking about, and I love the authenticity of how you wrote it out to me, and that's why I reached out to you and said, hey, let's have this conversation. So, Hesron, please share a little bit about yourself and your story and how you got here and like what it is that you want to share with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I appreciate you inviting me also. I'm a part-time life coach as well. I help others that are going through hardships in their marriage, just because I had a hardship in mine,
Yeah.
and things really started changing for me when I started owning and taking responsibility for everything that I did do and did not do, that contributed to my marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the tipping point for me, or my hitting rock bottom, was when out of nowhere, it felt like out of nowhere, because obviously something took me there. It was me, right? A bunch of
Mm-hmm.
bad choices, or wrong choices, or could have done better. But I a little bit over 2 years ago, my wife found that I was unfaithful to her,
Got
and
it.
that was rock bottom for me. Um,
That she
when I
found
re-
out.
what was
That
that?
she found out. What was the rock bottom when she found out, or that you realized that you were doing it?
So that when she found out, it made me aware of where I was,
Got it.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, obviously, like the guilt, these are values that I didn't necessarily have for myself. So something felt uncomfortable, but not to the point where I didn't say no, right? Um, but when she found out, and I saw that my family was jeopardized, then it kind of made me. It was a slap in the face. It was a cold water to my face that woke me up and was like, "Hey, you're here. Like, look what you have done, and where do you want to go?" Like that was where I encountered myself with
Mm-hmm.
that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the what? How did that evolve you to here? Like, are you still with your wife? Like, do you
I
guys
am.
work? Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's a hella story to tell right there. Is like, so how you like manned up and like popped out of this because this is not abnormal, right? Like
yeah,
there's millions of guys in all types of relationships that have all types of issues with this. Like I'm a
yeah,
guy, I know the animal, right? It's like sort of that instinctual thing that we all have.
yeah,
You know, for me, like I didn't know to go out with anybody until they like were attracted to me first. And as soon as that was, back in the day, that was like that's how it worked.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's this thing like when we get attention or somebody notices us or well, notices us, it's like there's a thing inside of us that says you have to go do that thing, right? Like it's like a puppy without a leash.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I totally get it. I know a lot of guys are going to get what you're talking about, but what you're also talking about is like owning that behavior and evolving out of that. Which I would love for you to share that part, like how you guys navigated that.
yeah. So thank you. And part of it is realizing and really knowing that that's not what I wanted for my life, right? Because at that point, also, Michael, like I could have chosen, and my wife at that time also gave me the free choice. She said, "Okay, well, if this is really the life you want, then I'm gonna let you free so that you could go and do what you want to do, right?" So,
Hmm.
um, it was one, me realizing that that's really not the path that I wanted to take, right? So if we have other men that that is what they want to do, then that's a choice too, right? But I noticed that that's not the life that I wanted. Those were not the values that I wanted to live by. It wasn't me being true to my true self, right? So first things first was owning everything that had that I had, all the wrong choices that I had made up to that point, that took me to that one point, right?
Hmm.
And And one of them is one of the things is sharing that with your wife, being 100% transparent, right? So I think a lot of relationships nowadays want to hold, everyone wants to hold on to their own without the sacrifice giving up a little bit, right? So that we can share in this relationship.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's scary, especially when you're used to not being that way. Um, you know, just to preface that a little bit, so I come from like a very conservative Christian background,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily speak about the stuff that is ugly, right? Or is considered ugly, right? So
Considered a yes,
yeah,
yes. Like the shame
and
that's attached to that, and those types of people do that sort of, yeah, all those messages,
yeah,
100% I get it. Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is that they hold us back from being able to either get help sometimes as well, right? Because
Hmm.
looking back in my journey, this is one of the reasons why I became a life coach to help other people, other men in the same situation, is because at that point I was looking around, even at like my close community, and I couldn't reach out. Why? Because you didn't talk about that kind of stuff, you know? And
Yeah.
I felt almost abandoned, you know? So but going back to me and my wife, that was one of the things that needed to happen was I needed to own everything, every decision that led me to the one that affected her the most, which was me, me being unfaithful. Um, and being open and transparent to her about all of it, right? Second thing, uh, right around that time, Michael, I had gone through one of Tim Ferriss's books. I think it was called Tools of Titans. I think it was,
Yeah.
and it's an awesome book.
Hmm.
And so what he does is he interviews like top notch people in all sorts of industries and just people he wants really some advice from because he's wanting to see what he could do after 40 because he
Hmm.
hit 40 and didn't know what to do. And so the response from half of the people to it was a question is like, what's one thing that you're doing nowadays um, that's most affected your life in a positive way or something? I think that was the question.
Yeah.
And half of the people answered in the entire book, answered that they were doing therapy. And half of those people, so about 25% of the book, said that they started doing therapy not because they needed it, just for the hell of it, and it was like the best thing that changed their life, right? So obviously, I had some issues that I needed to resolve within myself. So wasn't just for the hell of it, but I was really like, okay, this is my time to go seek for some help, right? So immediately I went to look for that help. And another thing that I told my wife was there was another story that I had listened to somewhere where I think it was like in the northeast somewhere. There was a building that fell, and it came down, and when they did some investigations, it was that there was some water issues underneath the foundation, right?
Hmm.
So they came back and they fixed it, and they thought they had fixed it. They erected the building back up, and this was a bigger building than before. And I think it was something like 15, 20 years later, the whole thing comes back down again. And what they missed was that I think it was like 15 to 20 feet, 30 feet below, deeper. They had to dig deeper. They would have found a pocket hole, just empty pocket hole. And that was the problem. They were building on an empty pocket hole. And I told Carla, I don't want to rebuild our relationship, our trust, without having a solid foundation. And that starts with my own solid foundation. So, in other words, me and you can't function if I know that I'm not at my best, you know? And it was me realizing that I was not at my best, that I did want to give my best, and actually going for that help. I think part of being a man and a male is one of those egos that you just want to do everything on your own. You want to fix everything on your own, but there's just certain things that cannot happen on our own.
Yeah. Takes a community.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like talking to each other. Like you said it, like you were isolated. You didn't have an outlet to talk about the things that were you were actually experiencing, right?
Yeah.
A, a lot of guys and human beings in general get like that, and that feeling of isolation. Did you have anybody that that you were talking about, whatever was underneath what was going on for you? Because usually, was there anything else that you experienced besides just how did the cheating thing that doesn't just happen? So like, was that a practice, or like what was the deal there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a little bit of background there. I started getting exposed to pornography around the age of 12, and this seems to be a lot more common now than it was maybe 30, 40 years ago, and it's just getting easier and easier with our devices, right? And everything at the palm of your hand. Um,
Literally.
but this for me, like, for me, it became an addiction eventually,
Hmm.
to where mm, it was an immediate fix, Michael, to stressful situations, even boredom, right?
Hmm.
And so, um, I tend to be a little bit more on the passive side of things.
Hmm.
So, just to give you an example, like there was a time where at parties or whatever gatherings, other women would ask my wife, "Oh, like does Hezron get upset or how many times?" And then she would say something like, "Oh man, it's like maybe even like a handful of times that I've ever seen him upset or mad or whatever." And that would feed my ego, like, oh yeah, he's the guy that could take it all. He's the patient guy, right? I want to be the patient guy, but I was being hurt. I was getting upset. It was just I didn't know how to verbalize it. I didn't know how to communicate that to my wife in a respectful way. Um, and so what did I do? I grabbed my phone, right? That was my outlet, and an immediate it
Yeah.
was an immediate fix for me.
Let's
You know,
talk about the feelings, right? So like this is so important, and a lot of people, we've heard this conversation. This is not a new thing, but what might be new is talking about like the feeling part that was underneath that. So you talked about it, but I want to kind of like dive in here.
yeah.
This is really important. Um, so you were feeling a certain way. You said bored. What was some other things?
So boredom was, not that wasn't created necessarily by my relationship, but what did come from the relationship that would make me go to it was stress. When I would get mad, right? And I just didn't have the way to explain how she was making me feel.
When you got mad, how did you feel?
I
How did it
felt,
feel inside your body when you got mad
I
and
mean,
couldn't
tense.
express it? And couldn't express it,
Yeah, tense. I felt tense, right?
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and yeah, and I just didn't have a healthy outlet for it. You know,
Yeah.
communication, positive communication is a healthy outlet. You know, but I went for the immediate fix, right? And that immediate fix could look different for your listeners, right? It just depends on what that
Whatever it is.
immediate fix for us, right? But that was my medium, and the reason why that hindered for me is that that the constant images that I was seeing became something easier to make into real life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you're visual, what you visualize, you materialize. So
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
yeah,
were
yeah. So
materializing these feelings
yeah,
that, in real life would probably be not that the porn and it's not real life, but like the physical mirror of that outside with having physical interactions with human beings versus on a screen. So it's like it's outside. Did that give you the same sort of feeling? Like, did you have that same sort of feeling before the porn and that it got alleviated? Was that the same sort of pattern with the people that you met or the person that you met?
yeah. So to a certain degree, yeah, right? Because there was no real intimacy,
Hmm.
right? Um, I could how can I put it?
It was
It
just
was,
physical.
yeah, yeah, it was fantasy, right? It was all
Yeah.
fantasy, right? Like, it was, you don't have to get upset, because if you get upset, I never talk to you again, and that's done, right?
Hmm.
Unlike at home, it's like I get upset and I have to see you again tomorrow and the day after, and I want to, it's just I don't know how to communicate yet, you know? And that
Yeah.
was really the problem, that just led me, instead of seeking a healthy communication with my wife, I started separating myself from her,
Okay.
and creating this fantasy behind the images that resulted, like you said, probably, it just manifested itself into reality, where
Hmm.
it was just another fantasy, because that was never really gonna go anywhere, right? But it was convenient, and it might have been convenient for both of us, but the point is that it was convenient for me, and I took it for what it was.
And then one day,
And then one day
Mama
she,
finds out, right?
yeah, and then one day she finds out. Yeah,
God bless her. Well, I get a sense of your wife already, and I've never met her, but like, it takes something to like she's still there. So there's a love and there's a connection and there's an understanding that that behavior really wasn't your authentic self, right?
yeah.
Like
So
you go,
that was
yeah,
one thing that I really appreciate, and obviously I love that about my wife, is that because she's a, maybe because she's a woman, women tend to be a little bit more intuitive than us men, or at least listen to their intuition a lot more than we do.
yeah,
Uh, I think she knew that that wasn't
who you
her
were.
real husband, the one that she married, and she knew that I was in there. It was just there was a lot of crap on top.
Yeah.
And so we had to work through the crap together.
How did you do that process? Did you have a structure? Like what was your journey of the day she found out to where you guys are at now? Like what does that look like? How do you keep that in your life, that level of communication, and not revert back to, those egoic pulls that we all have as human beings to do the things that, at our core level, it just wants us to be lazy and comfortable and, like scoot through life.
Yeah,
But if you ever want to evolve or expand, which a lot of us have the feeling and pull to do now, especially after for me, it was the pandemic. Like we're all moving into this grander version of ourselves,
yeah,
and the purpose, and that's why we're having this conversation right now, is because you're shifted into this purpose, and you're now wanting to share what you've got. You like the problem that you had, you
yeah,
now have a solution.
yeah,
You're living it, and you
yeah,
want to share that solution with other folks, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Totally.
Well,
And
share a little bit about that, like how that arose.
so we got to realize that there's a lot of energy going on within us, right? And so these emotions that you were asking about, right? Like me feeling upset, disappointment from something that she didn't get, the sadness that might have come from some conversations too. All of that, it's energy that needed to go somewhere, right? So a healthy conversation is one way of getting that out.
Hmm.
So uh, I got two probably things that, key takeaway maybe for your listeners that could come from this is one, um so hand in hand with this unfaithfulness, um and and the the physical part of being unfaithful was just part of it, right? There was another part is just me, like, really seeking other people's attention, in social media and this kind of stuff, right? So that's, it wasn't physical, but it was still me looking for attention that I wasn't getting at home, right? But all this energy needed to go somewhere, and I was just letting it out in a very kind of unhealthy way, right? For myself. And so I gained close to like 30 pounds. I was 30 pounds overweight. So, like, to the books, I was obese, right? And so I knew that part of this energy needed to come out in a healthy way. So one of the first things that I did was join a CrossFit gym, because for me, it was going to be a challenge on so many levels. One, it was going to get me active, right? Two, the only time that I could do it at at that time in my life was at 5 in the morning. Something that, because of my laziness, that all these bad habits that just had accumulated one after another, like
Hmm.
getting up early wasn't one of my things.
Hmm.
And then the other was, again, I needed to battle my ego. And what happens in a CrossFit gym is you have well, as a dude, right? As a guy, I have shorter classmates that are women that are lifting, 20, 30, 50 pounds more than I am, right? They're faster, they're stronger, and I need to get outside of myself and just remind myself, hey, don't compare yourself to her or to anybody else in this gym. You compare yourself to yesterday
Yes.
and see how you're doing from yesterday,
Oh,
right?
that's really brilliant.
Yeah, but it was
Yeah.
hard. It was hard, and I noticed that, like, obviously, like, the one of the biggest problems was my ego, right? So I needed to get my ego under submission, right? I needed to understand that. So that was one of the things, and up to this day, like, physical activity, resistance training, all of that is part of my daily life now, because there's so many benefits for mind, soul, and body, like, that come from activity, right?
Yeah.
And so number two, prayer and meditation. So for me, those are two separate things. For some of your listeners, it might be the same thing. But I had missed that. Like, I shared with you a little earlier. I came from a Christian background, but, like, the prayer was gone. It was non-existent in my life. And
Yeah.
to other people in my community, I looked like the guy that prayed every single day, or I sounded like one, or I looked like one, but I wasn't. Like, in my home, in my intimate life, it was non-existent. So I knew that I needed to bring that back. And then meditation, or I like to call it awareness exercises, because some people trip out on you know getting somewhere in meditation. And to me, that somewhere is just really being aware of, like, one thing me and you were talking about, before we started the podcast, was the different voices that we hear in our heads, right?
Yes. Yes.
So meditation, that the practice itself, it
Yeah.
allows us to quiet everything down. It allows us to tune everything out to the point where all you hear is your true voice,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Overcame.
it's so important for people to hear their true voice. Not the one that wants immediate fix, not the one that's fantasizing about what's going to happen tomorrow, but your true voice right now, right?
Yeah.
And because of how fast paced our life is, a lot of us are missing that, you know. And so I needed to understand when my ego was talking and when I was talking.
Okay. How did you do that? Because that's the crux to life, right? So for people listening, when we're talking about ego, we're talking about that pull or voice or thought, like it's really the thought is what it is. And then we react to the thought like it is real and we go do it. Like it's just like there's not really a bad intention. It's not like you see a thought and you go, oh, that's a bad thought. Let me go do that bad thing. We
Yeah,
don't think like that. We're
yeah,
like, oh, that thing, that would bring me comfort and joy in this moment. And yeah, like it always is the voice that wants you to sit down and pat your head and just stay over here, stay comfortable at all cost. Don't feel anything because it's that voice, that thing that pulls us. Don't get up at 5 o'clock in the
oh
morning.
yeah,
Don't do CrossFit. Don't meditation. Oh my God, you want to sit still? You don't want to hear me? Like it's an entity that's
yeah,
in us.
yeah,
So like what you're talking about is evolving out of that and listening to, because we do have a higher voice
yeah,
that is accessible through practice of meditation. Is one of the best and most effective ways that I've ever known to do it. I do it as well.
yeah,
It's not the same thing all the time, but I do it every single morning without fail.
yeah,
I think morning practices are probably one of the most powerful things human beings can do on planet Earth, period.
yeah.
But
Just
that
primes you for your
really
day.
gets you out of that space, because that's when you start producing another level of your life. Like that's when that part can like send its juice out to the universe and bring you back those experiences that mirror your what you're giving your focus to. So it's like that old adage is the are you walking the dog or is the dog walking you? So your
Yeah.
ego is when you're getting walked by the dog and it's when you're walking the dog, it's always uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's the clue that you're on that right path, not right path, but on the path to, I don't want to give right or wrong, but there's like, see how ingrained it is to us to think like that's the ego, right or wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just is. It's a choice. And when
Yeah.
we get past that, that's when it's so much easier for me to choose. And I bet it was for you too, to choose the thing that's like gonna take you forward instead of sitting you on the couch and being all comfortable all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
From
So,
your experience?
yeah, yeah. I mean, so it's like, when you were speaking, the one thing that was coming to my mind was like letting go of what's not serving us, right? For
Mhm.
for where we're trying to be. And the ego, like you said, is wants an immediate fix. It likes pleasure, it likes comfort, and it's not bad because it's really trying to look out for us, right? Like it's trying to look out so that we're not stressed, so that we're not in fear. Like it's just really trying to keep us super comfortable, right? Um, and but I realized that comfort was killing my marriage and it was destroying my
So
life.
everything.
So at this time, like I went for everything that made me uncomfortable, you
Mm.
know and and then what you learn in that process. You learn what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you, you know and you could let go of some stuff that even might, everybody in Instagram is preaching about. It's working for your best life, but it might not be working for you, so you just let it go, right? But for me, um meditation was one of those things where I could quiet everything down, so I could distinguish now the voices, right? And at the same time, I could focus, like you said, that this is a big key. Focus on what I did want, right? So I started visualizing how in a more empowered, more mature, stronger, more brave Hezron can look like in my marriage, right? And
What did you
so
see? Like, what did you see when you were visualizing?
yeah, so one
You're
thing,
visualizing something that's not there right now,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
you're seeing it on top of whatever you're perceiving.
yeah,
So this is another like rubber meets the road moment.
yeah.
So whenever what were you visualizing?
So, for example, a conversation, because conversations are a big deal for me. I keep bringing conversations up, right? Because in the past, when my feelings would get hurt or I'd get upset or whatever from these conversations, I would stay quiet, right? So, one of those things that I was able to see before it happened was me having an a respectful response to my wife as to how she was making me feel with whatever she was telling me, right? So this was not me blaming her, right? That she's mean or that she was trying to hurt my feelings, because she's my wife. I know she loves me. She's not trying to hurt my feelings. That's the other thing that we got to remember, is that we're on the same team,
Okay.
right? When we tend to forget that, all of a sudden we feel like we're in opposite teams. So one, keep that in mind. We're on the same team, and then two, since she's not trying to hurt my feelings, I got to let her know how I'm feeling, regardless of whether that was her intention or not, right? And there was a couple of times, Michael, where uh, you know now that I'm able to do this, where she caught herself and she was like, "Wow, I'm upset at you too, and I was trying to hurt your feelings, and I'm sorry." Dude, I had never heard that from her, like saying sorry for trying to hurt my feelings. But seeing that come from her just made me respect her and love her that much more, because she was owning her stuff too. So it just really opened up a really healthy communication. But since that didn't exist in my life before, it first started happening during these quiet times where everything was out of my mind and I could totally focus on who I wanted to become, right? And that's helped who I've become as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, um, every area of my life. So like meditation is a super powerful tool for anybody that really wants to become more than where they're at right now, you know?
How do you guys maintain where you're at now? So everything is still flowing, still communicating. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm doing a couple coaching thing, I'm always like, you guys got to plan a date night every single week just to go, hey, is there anything this week that happened that's like, hey, you looked at me funny on Tuesday. Did you like, or was there like, you've got to like create that space to cause the disruption because it just like life just sort of happens, it's like you take the kids here and you got church here and like you've got these events and it just becomes like a role. If you don't like interrupt that on purpose to create that time, do you guys do that? Do you create time just like it's just you to share and
We do. And it's like sacred time for us. Like we need to have it because it's super important. One of the things that led me, I guess, to to want to hide with all the problems that I had before was actually one thing you mentioned when the kids came into play, right? We have three kids. Um, all of a sudden, it's not just me and her. All of a sudden, she's just not mine. And when you don't take the time to really think about the different stages of life and plan those out too,
yeah,
then life just happens, right? And you don't know, you're not dealing with it. You're being walked by the dog,
dog.
right?
Yeah.
So
Wow, I never thought about that way. I bet a lot of people like when you found out you were having children, you got the 9 months, but I'm sure that most people don't sit around and just talk about it. It's like, okay, we're gonna have a kid here. We got to negotiate how we're going to like stay, a couple and have all of this stuff. Most people don't do that. They go straight into like all the focus is on that baby, right?
yeah, exactly.
And they're out of the picture when without them being a cohesive unit, like the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Writing's on the wall.
and that's the thing. That's part of like not asking for help, right? Or and I don't want to, there's nobody to blame, right? But our
No,
like our parents,
they were doing
now
the
that
best
I've
job
become a
that they
parent,
could.
it's like,
Our parents were doing the best job they could,
yeah, yeah,
and they
yeah.
passed along some
Yeah, yeah,
really.
yeah. And that's the thing, like, like one of the things is like how much like now I'm dealing with my kids, right? And one of the questions that come to my mind is like how much advice do I give them and how much do I let them learn on their own, right? And that's not an easy answer to I mean, that's not a easy question to answer. So, but where I'm at right now, it's like I give all the advice that I can and hopefully they pick up on whatever's going to serve them because the lack of advice creates problems too. And one of those things is like, okay, I'm at this new stage, and so the kids were part of it too, where I felt like they were robbing me of my wife, right?
Yeah,
And she's an awesome mom, something that I really wanted in a wife as well. Like even I knew, yeah, eventually I wanted a family, so I wanted a woman that was going to be an awesome mom. She's an awesome mom, but here now I'm getting upset because she is an awesome mom. And so those things just needed we talked it out, and that was part of the transparency process. Is like, hey, I was becoming jealous of my own kids. Oh, why? Well, because all your attention was on them, and then we get to the bed, and now we're too tired because it's the end of the day. So it really allowed us to make us priority for ourselves, for one another as well.
yeah,
And it's not that the kids become second priority, or they might, but they're still priority. The thing is that everything has its time and its space. So now we're more conscious of how we arrange that instead of being walked by the dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
And energetically, like that's what your kids are getting. They're not getting what's coming out of your mouth. They're getting what's coming out of your heart. So
Yeah.
your heart, like you're on point. So anybody can feel that when they just authentically talk to you. And so like your kids are gonna be good. And
I,
it somehow they come pre-hardwired now for a lot of different stuff. So I've just sort
yeah.
of noticed that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that that's like just the example of you communicating with your wife,
Yeah.
like Most,
and one of
I didn't grow up with that. My parents never really, I never saw them communicating.
yeah.
Like I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, so they get to see us now where um this is now a little bit over 2 years now, because of where we're at now in our relationship. They see me, and they see me come behind her and hug her and give her a kiss on the cheek or on the neck or something, and they look at us, and I tell them, what, she's my wife, she's your mama, like kind of teaching them, like, hey, this is how a healthy relationship looks, right? Like, if I wasn't even getting close to your mom, that's a problem. But um so going back to I think one of the questions that you were trying to ask me, and I totally skipped it, was really trying to bring the best Hezron every single day was part of this process. If I mean, I just this was just kind of my thought process, just because of how I'm wired. I'm always thinking of, like, behavior and thought process and all this. And I put myself in her shoes for a sec, and I said, if she sees any of the old Hezron, the Hezron where I call it the zombie Hezron, if she sees any of the zombie Hezron, she's gonna get triggered, and she's gonna be like, oh man, something is wrong, right? So she
Hmm.
needs to see the best version of Hezron every single day to understand that this is a different Hezron, like the version that she was expecting to see all along. And so that's part of it. And then two, be understanding, because sometimes I could do everything that's in my hands to try to avoid triggers, but there's stuff that just happens, right? So in that confession transparency process, she found out about dates and whatnot and this stuff. So there are certain dates around the year where are a little harder for her, you know so I can't get upset about her, taking a trip back to down memory lane,
Yeah.
because it's supernatural, right?
Yeah.
So it's
100%.
just, again, it's having that healthy conversation of being like, hey baby, I'm really sorry that because of my decisions, this day is not one of the best days of the year. Do you want to talk about it? And then I've left it up to her. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. It's part of that process that happens after an infidelity. You know,
Yeah.
um, it doesn't happen as much anymore, but sometimes she'll start asking questions as to why this, what happened there. And I already told her like a million times, but I gotta understand, right? It She's human. There's, like, what we don't understand sometimes, Michael, is that we are a lot more fragile and sensitive than we believe we are. And at the same time, we're so much more powerful than what we actually believe we are. So, one of the things that happens is, trauma hits us not just on the mental, spiritual level, but also hits us on a physical level. So I can't control all of it, right? So I gotta be patient, understand, and just keep working at it as we've come. I
You
think
can
that,
control how you respond to it, but
yeah,
that's about it. And then talk and
yeah,
communicate,
yeah,
which you are. So, all those amazing things. So, I can see totally why you would want to empower other couples to have a powerful relationship and give that back because of the benefit of what that would provide for, we're not talking just, a one off here. When you start talking families, you're talking legacy and generations. So
yeah,
it's something that's instilled in them to give them, like, they're going to land, in their life at a much higher up on the staircase than we did. And that's the whole point of, evolving. So, is there any like takeaways, or like, you're in Austin, right? But you work with people
yeah,
all over?
yeah.
Or,
I
okay.
mean, the virtual world has opened up the doors to be able to work with
And
anybody.
your website is called The Worst of These. And share a little bit like how you got that name. I thought that was interesting.
So theworstofthese.com. Yeah, that's my website. So I'm actually starting. I'm about to kick off of my own podcast, right?
Hmm.
So anybody that comes from a Christian background or is interested in any of that, can check it out. But it's basically, in the New Testament, in first century, like after the church was established, there was this guy named Paul. He was an apostle, did a lot of work, and so a lot of people have a really high view of him. right? Because of all the work that he did in that first century. And but in there's one particular verse is First Timothy chapter 1 verse 15. He compares himself to the other apostles, and he says he's the worst of them. Like in a nutshell, that's my paraphrase of that. That in comparison to others, I might be the worst, but I'm working my butt off. I'm working my butt off.
But you're doing it. You're getting results.
Yep.
Otherwise, your wife wouldn't be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have to give her a big hug for me. What's your wife's name?
Carla.
Carla. She should have been here. No, we'll have to have one with her. Get her
Yeah.
side.
So many people are wanting to ask. And maybe one day I'm sure she'll be ready. But like right now, I've talked to her about it because I have been asked before, and she says she needs a little bit more time still.
Well, I love it. I got a ton out of our conversation today. It was really enlightening, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah.
And in the description box of wherever this goes, I'll have all of your information in there that people can reach out and connect with you.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you.
Bet. You bet. You bet. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Like for me, this is really empowering to talk about, relationships that we're all, most of us are in some sort of relationship. And in the bigger picture, everything's a relationship. We're just relating to life and how the feedback that it gives us. And I love Hesron's example of he didn't like the feedback that he was getting and he did something about it and changed it up and become who he is today. And thank you so much for sharing that story with us. I appreciate it. And if you guys listening, hope you got tons of value out of it. Share it with all your friends. But we will see you on the next one.